Thank you for supporting CMA Math Academy. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more great CMA math content. Hey guys, it's Mr. Grady. Let's go over what we're learning today, why we're learning this, and how you'll know if you've successfully learned what you need to learn. So today, we're going to still be looking at systems of equations, and we're going to be able to write and solve a system when you're given a word problem or a scenario. Okay, so why are we learning this? Basically is because we've given you the two equations every time so far. So like when me and Mr. Schrog gave you something to work on, gave you the quiz, everything has been given to you, the two equations have, and you've had to go from there. And we're just switching it up, and instead of us giving you the equations, we're going to give you a situation, and you have to write the equations from that situation, and then you'll have to solve it from there. And then how will you know if you've been successful and you've learned what you need to learn? So when you're given a new word problem, if you can write those two equations, if you can solve them, and if you can apply them to what the question is talking about, then you'll know you successfully learned it. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's get started. So we're going to be on page M385, so I'm going to give you just a second to get over to M385. Alright, so on M385, there's obviously a word problem because that's what we're going over. So up at the top is question number 1, and I want to give you a minute here, and instead of starting off by reading it together, I want you to go ahead and you're going to read question 1 on your own, and from the question I want you to pick out any important information that you find. So this is your opinion, what you think is important. You're either going to circle it, box it, highlight it, underline it, whatever your style is. But I want you to pick out anything that's important. So you're going to take a minute and read question 1, looking for anything that is important. Okay? Ready? Go. Alright, so hopefully you've had a chance to read through question 1 and pick out the important information. The next thing I want you to do is you're going to just share with your table partner for a second, and I want you to compare what you found important versus what they found important. So I'm going to start with table partner number 1. And table partner number 1, you're going to share what you found important first, then partner number 2 will go after that. Okay, ready? Go. Alright, so hopefully you've had a chance to share with your table partner what you guys found important. Let's walk through this together. So now we're going to read it together. Again, when I stop, you're going to read the next word. So as we go through this, just remember that, again, we're a team. Everybody participates and you're following along. Okay, so up at the top, it says the admissions fee for the includes parking, amusement, and admissions to all commercial, agriculture, and judging. The cost of general is $7, and the price for under the age of 5 is there were people who attended the fair on the admissions fees collected to $2,768. Alright, so we've got a whole bunch of information. Let's think about what could be important that hopefully you picked out through this. So one thing I hope that you saw is really where it says the cost of general admissions is $7. So hopefully you have that general admissions is $7. The price for children under the age of 5 is $4, so that's also important. There were 449 people who attended the fair, so that's kind of important. It's kind of like our total. And then finally, the admissions fees collected amounted to $2,768. So really, as we look at this, there's two pieces of information they're talking about. They're talking about money, how much things cost, how much tickets are, and how much they made total. And then they're talking about people, either general admission, which is over the age of 5, or children under the age of 5, and then there was 449 total people. So let's look and use that information on question A. So for A, it says, write a system of equations in standard form for this situation. Use X to represent the number of people 5 and over. Use Y to represent the number of children under 5 years of age. So as I said earlier, they've really given us two different topics or categories in this problem. So we're going to use that to write our two equations. Because remember, a system of equation is at least more than one. So we're going to write two equations here. So we talked about before that one topic they talk about is people. So we're going to write the word people out. And here in a second, we're going to write an equation for people. Then the other thing they tell us about is the money amount. So $4, $2,768, $7, those things. So we have this other amount that's money. Okay. Then from here we just have to write our two equations. So let's start with people. If we think about people, they tell us a couple things. They tell us that there were 449 total people. So let's start with that. If it's a total 449, it should go at a certain place in our equation. So if there's ever a total amount of something in our equation, that's going to go at the end or at the back on the other side of the equal sign. So for us, for people, we're going to have some space, but then we know that at the end, the amount of people that were there were 449, because again, that was our total amount of people. Okay, really, other than that, they don't tell us anything else about the people. All that we know is that some of them were under the age of 5, and some of them were general admissions or over the age of 5. So let's think about if there's ever a value that we don't know, so we don't know a number for how many people, we can use a variable to represent that amount. So we know, even though we don't know the exact number, we know that there was some amount of people who were over the age of 5, so that would be x, and we know that there were some amount of people that were under the age of 5, okay? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to actually label this here. So we're going to say x is for over 5, y is for under 5. So then we have this information on the money. So it's kind of easier again to start with the total. So I'm going to give you a second, and I want you to lean over to your shoulder partner, and I want you to tell your shoulder partner what the total amount of money that they made was. Okay, go. All right, so hopefully the total amount of money that you found was $2,768. And again, we're getting that from the very end sentence right here. Okay, so let's look at what else they tell us about money. We know that general admission, or people over 5 years old, costs $7. So for every person that's over 5 years old, they have to pay $7 for it. So we know that our over 5s were x's. That's what we put in our other equation. So we're still going to keep that. We're just going to have a coefficient in front of that, because we know that every person who was an x, or who was over 5, cost $7. So $7 times x amount of people who are over 5, plus, and I want you to take a second, I want to see if you can figure out what y is going to be. How many y will we have? So think how much a ticket for an under 5-year-old costs. Okay, go ahead and do this part. Alright, so let's see how we did. So on 3, you're going to tell me how many y this is. So 1y, 2y, 5y, whatever you got for your answer for this part. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Alright, we should have said 4y. And again, we're getting that because it's $4 per ticket. Okay, so here's our two equations we're going to use. And from here, we're going to just use these two to answer a couple questions. So I want you to look down now at B. So here's B. And if we look at the question, it says, without solving the system of linear equations, interpret the solution. So here's what it's saying, and I have my equations over to the left so you can still see them. That's saying that at the end of our problem, x and y will represent something. And again, that's not saying a number. We're not looking for a number here. We're just looking for what they would represent. So I'm going to give you a second to see if you can remember what we've talked about, what x is going to represent at the end, and what y is going to represent at the end. Alright, so let's see how we did. So real quick, I want you to share with your table partner. If you're table partner number 1, you're going to say the x's. If you're table partner number 2, you're going to tell what y represents. Okay, starting with table partner 1, go. Alright, so remember from earlier that we said that the x's represent everybody who's over the age of 5. Okay, and we also said the y's represent everybody who's under the age of 5. So at the end, we're going to know how many people who were over the age of 5 bought tickets and how many people who were under the age of 5 bought tickets. So then C tells you to solve the system of equations using substitution. So I'm going to give you a second to do that. Then interpret the solution in terms of the problem situation. So after you're done, You're going to tell me how many people over the age of 5 bought a ticket and how many people under the age of 5 bought a ticket. So I'm going to give you a second to solve this using substitution. Ready, go. All right, so let's see how we did. So remember with substitution, our first goal is to get a variable by itself. Now in this problem, we're really helped out because x and y, neither one of these values have a coefficient that we can see. Remember, we know that if it's just x and y, there's really a 1 next to the x and in front of the y. However, for us, we could have solved for x or for y and still been fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to try and get y by itself. So I'm going to solve for y. If you solve for x, then our work might look a little different. However, our answer should still be the same, so you can still follow along with me. So if you solve for y, yours should look like mine. So one thing we would do is we would take that top equation and we just rewrite it down below. So I'm going to switch colors here and I'm going to rewrite x plus y equals 449. Okay, so we have this here. Now remember, our goal was to get y by itself. So I know that to get y by itself, I need to move x to my opposite side. Since x is positive x, I would subtract my x from both sides. So that's going to cancel out my left side. And when I subtract x from the right side, I'm left with y equals 449 minus x. And then finally, to get it into slope-intercept form, I'm just going to switch my two values on the right side. So my final equation would say y equals negative x plus 449. Okay, so here's my equation. So now that I have y by itself, I'm going to box everything behind the equal sign. Okay, and I'm going to substitute this information back into the second equation. So since I used the first equation to solve for y, I'm going to use the second equation to substitute. So I should write this up, and I'm going to substitute it into my second equation. So we're going to take that second equation, and we're just going to write it out to the side. Remember, when we get to the y value, we're going to change that y out for what we know y is equal to. So we have 7x plus 4, but instead of y, we're going to have negative x plus 449 equals 2,768. So we're here now. Okay, so now we're ready to start solving. So my first step towards solving, and hopefully you guys did this too, would be the distributive property. So I know as I multiply that I'm not doing anything with the 7x, so I'm going to bring 7x down. But then as I multiply this, I have 4 times negative x, so that gives me negative 4x. And I have 4 times positive 449, which gives me a pretty big number, 1,796. And then I still have 2,768 on my right side. So now I'm ready to start combining like terms. So I know 7x minus 4x is 3x. Then all I'm left to do is to move my constant over to the other side. So I have a constant of 1,796, and it's positive, so I'm going to subtract 1,796 from the right side and get my total. And as I subtract these, I end up with a total of 972. So I'm just going to move my 3x over just to rewrite it a little closer. So here's where I'm at. 3x equals 972. Then finally, you should have divided by 3 to get your final answer. So on 3, we're all going to say what our answer was for x. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Alright, and if we did this correctly, we end up with 324 for our x value. Okay? So we have x, now it's time to get y. So remember, we have multiple options of where we can sub this back in. You could have subbed it into the first equation. You could have subbed it into the second equation. You could have subbed it into the third equation. Any of these would have been totally fine and would have worked out. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick with the one we started with, and I'm going to sub my x value back into the first equation. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight my first equation so we know which one I'm using. And I'm going to start to rewrite this, only instead of x, remember we have 324. So I have 324 plus y, and that's supposed to equal 449. Okay, and then it's just a one step to solve, so you should have subtracted 324 to move it to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 324. Okay, and that'll cancel out, and I'm left with my y value. So I'm going to give you a second here, and I want you to tell me on 3 what our y value is equal to. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good. We should have gotten 125. Now, normally we would write our answer as ordered pairs, but remember this problem asks us to interpret the solution of the system in terms of the actual situation. So remember, as we talked up above, our x represented how many people over the age of 5, and our y represented how many people under the age of 5. So for us, we know that if x is over the age of 5, that 324 people over the age of 5 bought a ticket. So we're going to say 324 people over the age of 5 okay, so there was 324 people over the age of 5. So the only other remaining is our y value. So there was 125 people under the age of 5. Okay, and now we've interpreted our situation. All right, let's go on to the next one. So I'm going to start number 2 with you, and then you're going to do some work on your own. So like we did the first time on number 1, I'm going to give you a second, and I want you to look through number 2, and I want you to pick out anything that you see is valuable or important. Then we'll share this here in just 1 second. Okay, ready, go. All right, so now that you've had a chance to read it, again, I want you to share with your shoulder partner real fast. So partner number 2, you're going to go first. 2s are going to share what they thought was important, then 1s will share what they thought was important. Ready, go. All right, so let's go through and let's read question 2 together. Remember, when I stop, you're going to read the next word. So here we go. It says, the business for a band must make $236,000 from ticket to cover costs and a reasonable, the auditorium where the will play has seats with 2,800 seats on the main and 1,200 on the upper. Attendees will pay more for main level seats. Okay, so this one again had a lot of information for us. Some things we might want to have picked out. So we know that the band is trying to make a profit. They must make a certain amount of money. They had to make $236,000. We know that the place that they're playing has 4,000 seats with 2,800 seats on the main level and 1,200 on the upper level. We also know that people will pay $20 more for main level seats than they will regular seats. Let's look at A. A says write a system of equations, again like last time, with X representing the cost of main level seating and Y representing the cost of upper level seating. So now that we've looked at the important information, let's start splitting up this information into our categories so that we can start writing our 2 equations. So if we think about this, again, there's kind of some information that sticks out. One thing that they've told us is the different amount of tickets they're selling. So we're going to have one of our categories be tickets, because that's one thing they've talked about. Okay. The other thing that they've talked about with us is the different types of seating you can get. So the types of seating or the seating. So here's really the 2 things that they've talked to us about. So let's start with the different types of tickets. So one type of ticket we could buy is for the main level, and one type of ticket is for the upper level. Now the main level, we know that there are 2,800 amount of seats in the main level. So for us, that's like 2,800x. Now we also know that if we add that to what we have in the upper level, so real quick, tell me guys, how many upper level seats are there? One more time, how many upper level seats? So we know that if there's 1,200 of the upper level seats, that's going to be our Y value. So now that we have the left side, let's look at what our total would be. So they give us a couple totals here. They give us the total of 4,000 seats. That's something that's in the problem. They also give us $236,000. That's another total. We have to decide which one to use. Now, if you remember back down below in our problem, our directions, it says that X represents the cost of main level seating. So that's why X is next to 2,800. And Y represents the cost of upper level seating. So we're saying if a certain amount of tickets are bought for $2,800 and a certain amount of tickets are bought for $1,200, the total amount we would make, or the total amount we need to sell, should equal $236,000. So we're using that total. Okay, let's look at the different types of seating that they offer us. So far, they really only give us one sentence that we need to examine. They tell us that attendees, and I'm going to highlight it, will pay $20 more for main level seating. So what that's telling us is that main level seating is kind of like adding $20 to the upper level seating. So we know that main level seating represented X. So if you remember in the directions again, main level seating was X. So we know that X, or main level seating, is equal to upper level seating plus 20. So I want you to think about it and see if you can write this down. How would I show upper level seating plus 20? Okay, so let's see how we did. So we should have had y plus 20 because there's our upper level seating, y plus 20. So now that we have our two equations, I want you to go ahead and answer questions B and C. So I'm going to give you a few seconds here to answer questions B and C. Use your table partner to help you, or raise your hand if you have a question. Ready, go. Alright, so let's check our work with mine up here. Instead of going step by step through the equation, we'll just go over the answers real fast. So B said without solving the system of linear equations, interpret the solution. And as we discussed in our previous question, X represented the cost for main level seating, or the cost per ticket, and Y represented the cost per ticket for an upper level seating. So C said to solve it, and you had to do that, and you should have come up with X equals 65 and Y was 45, which tells us that main level seating costs $65 per ticket and upper level seating costs $45 per ticket. So with that said, here's your time you're going to get to finish up and do some more work on your own. So we're going to go to page 87. There's a scenario about Miss Ross and her class having a quiz. So you guys can relate to this. We have a test and we have a quiz sometimes in math. And I'm giving you one hint that it says write the system of equations. I'm going to tell you that your two categories I want you to make is one for points. So you're going to come up with an equation that has to do with points, and you're going to come up with another equation that has to do with the amount of questions on the test. But from there I want you to work. So you're going to do A, then you're going to go down and do B and C on page 87. So this is your work time. Alright guys,